I want to do a speed review of attributes of great salespeople. And this, by the way, that was not written by me. Everything I ever have has been, or that I present has been culled over years from different sources. So I try and give people the credit. But I want to go through this, and the reason I want to go through this with you is, as we're going through it, I want you to think of the attribute that is your best attribute, and also one that is your worst. In other words, where you need to work. Okay? So what's best out of these descriptions and which is your worst? Because then we're going to work on the best one, but also be cognizant of the worst one. So empathy, simple explanation. People without empathy, people who are greedy, never survive long in sales.
Right.
You have to care about your client, your customer, to get repeat business. You truly do have to give them things to receive back, okay? There's another great book that's just been introduced in the last month called The Go-Giver Sells More. The Go-Giver Sells More, and it talks about giving to receive, okay? So the second attribute, so your question is this my strength or is this my weakness? They believe in themselves, but I call this being conscious of who you are and how good you are. In other words, not having an overtly big impression of who you are as a salesperson, having a realistic view. In other words, if you look at yourself in the mirror and see the same person that other people see, that's a balanced view of yourself. If you look in the mirror and see a giant and they see a little midget, then you have a too high an opinion of your abilities. But you can also have too low an opinion of your abilities. Next is, first and foremost, they try to impress themselves. They're not out to impress the world. They're trying to, they have their own internal scorecard. The best people I've ever seen in, we talked about sports.
Yeah.
And when you see somebody like Timo Solani, who's 40-something years old and still playing, he could have retired years ago, but he's out to prove something to himself that he can do it for a long period of time. So next is high level of productivity. And by the way, this is how many hours you work, but how productive you are. I know a lot of people put in a lot of hours and get nothing done. It's called spinning your wheels. They're not organized. They're not structured. They don't get things done. I think one of the people here had an example last month about, boy, they just never get that call in every day because they just aren't disciplined enough to do it. Competitive, I just met with 25. Their average age was 30 years old. They're internet marketeers. They're the best in class. And what was really interesting is we did a profile of them all. Every one of them was competitive to a very high degree, but not competitive within their own company, competitive against themselves, trying to improve constantly and getting better. It was a common trait amongst this whole group. We did an exercise to expose it. High energy level, this has a lot of things to do with mental energy, physical energy. Like you mentioned, Brian, what did you do before you came here?
I went for a run.
Okay, so late in the afternoon, worked hard all day, went for a run, so he's obviously physically and mentally sharp, right? And if you take care of your body in that way, it'll help you in your work. They want to please. People like approval. It's nice, at the end of any presentation that I do, I'm going to ask you to do something for me today, and you won't hurt my feelings. I want you to either rate me 1 being worst, 10 being best on the presentation, okay? And I really want you to score it. I want you to send it to Brian blind, and I want him to score the presentation, okay? Because I believe that if I don't get a feedback, I'll never improve, okay? So I want to please people. I want to do things that make them happy. They see themselves as different than the rest. So they figured they could do whatever they set their minds to. They have the ability to really focus. Entrepreneurs specifically and salespeople specifically sometimes have a trouble on focusing on something. In other words, having key metrics that they do every day in order to improve. So what I'd ask you to do is figure out what your key metrics should be in your job and do that every day. Make it simple. You know what the key metrics in hockey were? 20 shots and 20 hits every period. And if you did that every game, you'd win the game.
Wow.
And then the other team, you had to hope didn't do as many. Because you saw a game the other night, right?
Yeah.
They work towards getting a system down. What pleases me with you is that you actually heard something last meeting and acted on it. So that gratifies me, okay? It feels good when you can help somebody maybe towards benefits, something that benefits them. Ask questions and constantly work at growing themselves. Whether you have a mentor, a manager, somebody you can ask for help, don't be afraid to ask for it. And they have a high opinion of themselves. You know, sales is a tough business, isn't it? And only the good get rewarded really well. So you've got to be able to take rejection, refocus it, and focus on getting better results. And responsive and reliable. I've added this. You know, it's amazing, and I'll give you the construction analogy. My wife's wanted a fireplace in our bedroom and a kitchen remodel for the last 2 years. We have the money, the ability, the capacity to make a decision. Every 3 months she gets fired up about it and calls 3 contractors who were referred to us by someone. How many do you think show up for the appointment? Take a wild guess. Maybe 1 of 3. How many of the 4 people that have actually shown, and oh, by the way, 75% of them are an hour late.
Wow.
Okay? So 4 showed up out of 12 over the last year. 75% of them are an hour late, or they call before the appointment, say, I'm going to be, they typically call. How many do you think gave us a written bid on the fireplace and the kitchen remodel? How many?
50%.
0.
Wow.
So the state of the economy is horrible, supposedly, right? Or somewhat improving. Contractors are starving all over the place, supposedly. And I can't get one to show up at our house. We're like throwing money out the window and they won't come visit us.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm saying the same thing about sales. I think sales competency is doing the right things right and not making the mistakes. So returning calls quickly, returning emails quickly, right? Being very responsive. When you commit to something for your client, customer, do it. In other words, say what you're going to do and do it. Be a person of integrity. Okay? Say what you'll do and do what you say.